Shalom, WJC families. Time for our weekly Torah talk. This week we are reading Parshat Mishpatim, a major downshift in feel from the Parsha we read last week, Parshat Yitro, which had the Aseret HaDibrot, these 10 commandments, 10 principles that seem to be sort of a summary of the backbone of what it means to practice and believe as a Jew. Then we turn to this week's parsha, to Parshat Mishpatim, and there's a huge shift. The parsha begins, Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tasim lifnechem. These are the rules, the laws, the ordinances, depending how you translate mishpatim, but the laws that you shall set before them. Right, this is God speaking to Moses, and what follows is a whole legal code, a legal treatise. But it's very dry. It's very legalistic, as opposed to the narrative forms in which we've been getting so much of our law up until now. Now it's just laying it out. This is what you do when this happens. This is what you should avoid. This is how you should observe. It is quite the shift. It seems almost like a non sequitur. So Rashi, the medieval commentator, when he's commenting on this, he brings a couple of ways to connect. So first he says, so what immediately comes prior to this, in the end of Parshat Yitro, after the giving of the Decalogue of the Aseret HaDibrot, God gives instructions for how to build the altar. And it says you should not build the altar out of hewn stone, right? Stairs, but they should be unfinished, so that when you ascend my steps, your nakedness should not be exposed. I guess if you were wearing a robe, as was the fashion of the time, and you went up steps, think about a dress, I guess, or a dress with a slit, maybe it would expose a lot of leg, and that seems to be a no-no. So Rashi says, what does building an altar have to do with a legal code? He says, actually, this is not a non sequitur at all. So Rashi wants to establish two principles from this. One, just as the laws of the Ten Commandments, the principles of the Ten Commandments were given at Sinai, so too these laws, which are introduced by Ve'ela, right, and these, making some connection to what came before it, these are also from Sinai, right? This is one of the places where we get the principle that all of Jewish law, literally or figuratively, depending on your approach to this, comes from Sinai, is connected to this incident of revelation on Sinai. Okay, fine. The other thing that Rashi establishes, which I think is even bolder, and he quotes a midrash to get us there, is that the altar and the laws of Jewish practice are intimately connected. Right? You can't dissociate how you live and the principles, the laws that dictate how you live, from Jewish religion. And to connect it, Rashi brings a midrash from Tanhuma that says exactly this: the connection between building an altar and having these laws is that religious life and secular, right, daily, regular life, need to be connected. In other words, there's no such thing as secular life as we think of it today. But we need to have integrity between what goes on in our spiritual life and how we do our business, how we take care of, how we treat other people, especially those who are least among us, how we interact with our civil institutions. All of those things are in fact part of religion, and to show it, this Midrash and the Rashi tell us that the Sanhedrin, the great court, the Supreme Court of Jewish law, would meet on the Temple Mount. Right? That's how closely connected they are. That there needs to be not just a place to make sacrifices and to worship on the Temple Mount, but there also needs to be a place where the courts meet. Because that's the kind of integrity Judaism is looking for in its life. And this, I don't know, maybe it seems like a given now, although I would argue we are getting away from that again, that we feel like religion happens in the house of faith and what we do in the rest of our lives doesn't need to be connected to that. If I go and I say my prayers, I can be crooked in my business, right? This is no. You need to have integrity in all those things. It's also seemingly a major departure from the society around which the Israelite culture is flourishing, where there was sort of the religious cult in a community, and then people went about their business doing things not necessarily related to their religious practice. So, number one, I wanted to draw out this connection that I think is still very important for us today, that as Jews, we don't believe that religion happens in synagogue, and then the rest of our life, well, that secular religion shouldn't enter into it. That's not to say that we should impose religious law in other places. That's not what I'm saying. But we should impose religious principles on ourselves in the way we practice our business, in the way we treat our family, in the way we treat those in need, how we give tzedakah, how we support our society, how we get involved in civic life. That all of that has to be based on the principles that dictate our religious life, the principles that we learn here. But another midrash takes us even a step further, and this is really what I wanted to bring. Rashi doesn't bring this, but in Sanhedrin, the tractate about the courts, which I studied in its entirety a few years ago, there's a quote from Rabbi Elazar who says, "From where can it be derived that a judge should not trample on the heads of their holy people? Because the Torah says, do not ascend by the altar steps," right? The end of Parshat Yitro. And right next to it says, these are the laws. Right? So what is Rabbi Elazar's logic? Excuse me? Rabbi Elazar seems to be saying, okay, fine. We want you to have integrity in your secular life and your religious life. But more than that, what does that integrity have to be based on? It has to be based on the dignity of others. So how does he draw this from walking up, a ramp rather than steps to the altar? Rabbi Elazar says, look, stones don't get embarrassed. Stones don't feel shame. So walking up stones such that they might see up your skirt, this robe, right? So they might see up your robe. I mean, that doesn't seem like a big deal. So if the Torah forbids that, how much more so would it forbid trampling on the heads of people who can be embarrassed, who can be shamed? And why? How do we connect it to a judge? The very next line is about judges. It's about these laws. So you judges should not trample on the heads of the people. In other words, there needs to be ethics when it comes to the legal system. There has to, if you are a trained lawyer, someone trained in the law, there are certain expectations on you and how you treat the rest of the people, especially in how you adjudicate law. That law should not be used as a cudgel to manipulate people. And there are lots of laws as we get further into Mishpatim about not taking bribes and being fair. And those laws repeat over the course of the Torah, or are developed over the course of the Torah. But also as a respect, like the judges were the heads of the society here. We have no kings. We have prophets, fine. But like judges were very important civil servants. And it's saying leaders should not be out to manipulate their people, to trample on the heads of people as they try and get ahead, right? But that's not what God expects from us. That getting ahead by trampling on the heads of others, especially if you serve in a leadership role, that you're supposed to be a model for others, right? That you have to have that integrity. You have to treat others with dignity. If you have gotten ahead by trampling on the heads of people, you haven't really gotten ahead at all. You might feel powerful, you might have influence, but in the end, you have gained nothing in the eyes of God, nothing in the eyes of Judaism. Because in order to practice as a Jew, you need to not only be pious, right? Not only observe all the laws, all the ritual laws, all the worshiping laws as much as possible, but it also, as we learned, is how it affects the rest of your life. You have to live with that integrity. And what is the backbone of that integrity? What is the most important thing in that integrity? It's not trampling on the heads of others, right? It's not getting ahead by taking away the dignity of others. And these teachings about this transition from the altar to law really spoke to me as we see what's going on in the society around us. How lots of people claim piety, claim to be just and right, and the ones with authority based on what they say are their religious credentials, and at the same time are engaged in all kinds of awful acts, awful indignities to other people, and we see this in all circles of life these days. I'm not commenting on one particular place. It's not politics. It's not church scandals. It's not business scandals. It's all of the above. It is time that we re-infuse some of this idea into our society, that you cannot be a good person by being pious on the one hand and taking advantage of others on the other hand. It just doesn't work. You have to climb the altar in a way that is dignified, and you have to adjudicate your society and interact in society in a way that is just as dignified, just as committed to bringing holiness into the world, just as committed to being a representative of God in the world, of being little less than angels, and not giving in to our animalistic self, our drive for power, our drive for advantage. May we not only fulfill that in our own lives, but may we teach that such that the whole society can rise up to a level that we all hope and expect it to be at. And I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.